Welcome to our work session for June the 2nd. We have several topics tonight that we wish to discuss, and our first topic concerns conservation easements. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Brandon, yes, for his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't put together a formal presentation today because I figured this was a work session, and I kind of wanted it to turn into a question and answer session and kind of a myth busting session on these conservation easements, because there's a lot of preformed information out there that's incorrect on these things. I have with me today Allison Teeter. She's the PDR manager and natural resources planner for Clark County. She's very good with leveraging funds and understands a lot about the local government interests in conservation easements in the state of Virginia. She's a great resource. She's agreed to come, and I appreciate her being here. As well as Kelly Watkinson, who has years of experience with the Potomac Conservancy, and she's been volunteering her time to help us with the Conservation Easement Authority, giving us her expertise and volunteering to help out and help us get started. You have in front of you two little packets here. The one on top was prepared by Ms. Teeter, and she's got a brief presentation that she wants to go through here to explain a little bit about the way it can be used to leverage funds. And the first page behind the little pamphlet of the second one here was put together by Kelly Watkinson about a month ago. We received it and took a look at it at the easement authority meeting. And I think she's going to go through that too, to explain a little bit about how we could possibly benefit from some funds. And also behind that, you'll find several other pages of, which is just documentation that the Conservation Easement Authority has approved for handouts and for when we're ready to start moving on these easements. Also includes an email from Garland about the land use rollback tax numbers and a little explanation of why it was different than what you saw in my original report to the Board of Supervisors. So with no further ado, I'll introduce Allison Teeter.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you for having me today, and hope I can answer your questions and share a little bit about what we're doing up in Clark County. Clark County's had an easement authority since 2003. Board of Supervisors established it and put a section in the code to acknowledge that it exists and how it's to function. So, as Brandon said, it sounded like the focus that y'all were concerned about at today's meeting in part was the funding and how do you pay for easements, and so I'll just share with you how we do it up there. The first page here just sort of shows how we get funded as an easement authority. It is a board appointed by the Board of Supervisors, and this is just Section 72 is just part of the establishment of the easement authority, but it basically says that the Board of Supervisors funds the easement authority through special appropriation, and that's generally end of year money if there's any left over. We've been successful in getting about $150,000 a year from the board since the inception, so they have made it a priority, even though we don't have a specific line item in the budget.
Now, is this amount, how is it arrived at this $150,000?
I can't say, to be honest with you. I think it was just a figure. I wasn't staffing the authority when it was first established, and I think that was just something that they felt was maybe not too much, but enough to sort of look at what property values would be and what an easement might cost, and then sort of set what they felt was a reasonable figure at the time. You know, from the easement authority standpoint, we always want more, but it has actually worked for us quite well. And they do allow us to carry over from year to year. Sometimes when you're working with some of these federal programs, the conservation easement purchases take more than one fiscal year to close on. So it's helpful to have that sort of a rolling number.
Now, is this $150,000 designated solely for purchases, or?
Yeah, we can use it for legal fees, or we actually do the easement authority has its own fundraising activity where they solicit for donations from citizens, and we use the money we've gotten through that for things like surveys, if we need a survey for a particular property, or appraisals, things of that nature. And some of the grant functions Kelly will probably go into, but some of them will pay for half the expenses related to closing on an easement.
What are some of the programs that you use to solicit funds from the public? Yes. That you're saying take donations from?
Yeah, we have, I didn't bring examples of all this, but we put out a quarterly newsletter, that, and 2 times a year that goes into the county tax bills. The treasurer's been kind enough to let us just include it without charging us extra, so we get distribution throughout the county on that. And within that, there's a place to say, you know, would you like to help the easement authority accomplish our goals of preserving land and open space and farmland and so on. And surprisingly, a lot of people do, you know, send us $25 or $100 or what have you, and over the years, it's added up to, you know, where we have, I don't know, $20,000. I mean, it's surprising how many people get behind the program and want to do their part and help out, even if it's, like, say, you can get checks for $10 from some people, but it's been successful, and it has really helped us to be able to do some of the sort of peripheral items. You know, it's not generally enough to purchase an easement, but it definitely helps out with the survey costs and appraisals and stuff, which can run into the thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the property. So then the next section is just the other way that we get funding is from rollback tax, and I just for your information included the language that they included in our fiscal policy that the county has. I don't know if y'all follow that format, but basically just they had a resolution that provided that we would get the rollback tax. Now, in the boom years in the mid 2000s, we did get quite a lot, up to I think 146,000 one year, but most years it's not too much. Of course, Clark is sort of like Shenandoah in some ways. We have more farming and development, and so rollback doesn't amount to too much most years. So, but I just, you know, that is another fundraiser, and I know other communities will do like penny tax or something like that to help fund the authority, or whatever you call it, PDR program. And then, of course, grant funds are a huge amount of our funding, and we rely on them heavily for easement purchases. Our program also allows for easement donation, so we do have people that will donate easements. They do that if their income level is such that they can take advantage of tax credits. Virginia has a great tax credit program, and it can be advantageous if your income level supports that.
Our program is set up the same way. The ordinance that you passed in 2007 set up the easement authority and authorized it to accept donated easements, as well as spend any money that's appropriated by the Board of Supervisors to purchase conservation easements. And that's the same thing as a PDR, the purchase of development rights, purchase of conservation easements. These terms are all interchangeable. Whenever you go beyond just accepting the tax credits that are available at the federal and local and state level, I think the community normally recognizes that as a PDR.
Yeah, we just call ours an easement authority.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's what we do
the
as
same.
well.
Okay. So then the next page, there's another kind of factor that we use when we do purchase easements. Well, there's several factors, but in general, we are trying to target local funds to low and moderate income farmers or landowners, and so we actually copied this from Albemarle County. Has a similar, what we call a sliding scale, but basically it looks at, we ask for the tax returns from individuals or corporations from the last 3 years and average their income, and then depending on where they fall on this chart, that's the percentage of the easement value we would pay for pay them. For example, if an easement was $100,000 and they were in the $125,000 to $135,000 average income range, well, we're only going to pay 52% of that, or what, $52,000. So that sort of, then again, what we're acknowledging is that the more money you make, the more advantage you can take of tax credits and other financial benefits that the lower income farmers can't take. And of course, seeing that we do have limited funds, we don't want to squander them on people that they don't need. And then the next sheet, you can look at your leisure. I won't go through it, but it just sort of gives some examples of how we calculate that. And this is something I provide to property owners that are interested in participating in the easement program, purchase program.
That sliding scale AGI value is very interesting. Ours isn't set up that way. The ordinance that you passed in 2007 isn't set up that way, but you do have ranking criteria that allow the authority to rank which easements have a higher value and to put them in order for purchase, so it's not just a discretionary decision about people choosing between the landowners. Although that's not one of them that's included in there, it's something we could look at some point. I know that the easement authority has identified a few of the ranking criteria that need to be looked at some point when funding does become available. I think we want to take another look at our ranking criteria and make sure they're accurate and they really get to the end properties that we really want to be preserving.
Well, one of the things you rank is the percentage of the easement that's donated